The story that this video is about has shaken America. It was so shocking that 6 months later, it was one of the best TV series of 1991. Well, one of its members still runs its YouTube channel. Not tired of answering questions related to what happened, the story begins in Garden Grove, California, with a man named David Brown. By 1985, David had succeeded as a successful businessman. His business involved recovering data from damaged computer media and bringing him a very good income. But the man didn't stop there. He wanted to live a more and more rich life. So I tried my best to develop my already successful project. As for David's private life, by the time he was 32, he had a large house in which, in addition to himself, lived his young 23-year-old wife Linda, their 8-month-old daughter Crystal, Linda's 17-year-old sister Patty Belly, aged, and David's older daughter from a previous marriage. Linda and Patty grew up in a large family and their father left them early, so the girl spent her entire childhood with her mother, who had 8 other children besides Linda and Patty. David lived next door to them. He was very busy with his work, and he just had no time to do household chores. As a result, he offered to pay Linda's mother to send one of her daughters to him several times a week to do chores at David's house. Linda's mother agreed, and twice a week sent her eldest daughter Linda to David's house to cook and clean. Despite the age difference, at the age of 9, David and Linda began a relationship and, at the age of 17, they married. However, their marriage lasted only a couple of months, after which they divorced. Shortly after, David married again, and it was his 5th marriage, but he was also very short, and eventually David and Linda got back together and got married a second time. This time their marriage was much stronger than the previous one, and 5 years later they had a daughter Crystal. On March 19, 1985, police were called to the Brown family home. On the ground floor of the house, police found David, his 8-month-old daughter, as well as a frightened Patty, the younger sister of David's wife. The body of 23-year-old Linda Brown, David's wife, was found in the bedroom on the 2nd floor of the house and died of 2 gunshots. David told me that he and Linda had a little fight this evening, which led to him leaving the house to have a little fun in his car. He went to the beach where he just sat and thought about his life. He wasn't home for about an hour. When he returned, he found Patty holding his 8-month-old Crystal. The girl was very frightened as David's eldest daughter, Cinnamon, who lived with them, threatened her with a gun and even fired several shots in her direction, which was confirmed by 3 bullet holes in the wall. David explained to the police that Cinnamon was a very troubled child and that she had become even more uncontrollable. With the onset of puberty, she was constantly arguing with her stepmother Linda, which eventually led to Linda insisting that Cinnamon sleep in a trailer on the front lawn. At the moment, he had no idea where his 14-year-old daughter was. According to him, he himself was very afraid of what had happened, so he didn't even go into his wife's bedroom and called the police immediately. The police searched the vicinity of the house for Cinnamon and found the girl. They found her in a doghouse in the backyard of the house. It was a very unpleasant sight. The 14-year-old girl was lying unconscious in her own urine and vomit, and in her hands was a suicide note that was written, "God forgive me, I didn't mean to hurt her." The girl was taken away by the medics. On the way to the hospital, she regained consciousness, saying that she had taken more than 50 different pills in an attempt to die. She spent several days in hospital before being taken to the police station, as she was the main suspect in the murder of her stepmother, Linda Brown. During the interrogation, the girl did not deny her guilt and confessed fully to the murder. She said that she did it because Linda didn't love her and tried to get out of the house, constantly complaining about her to David, Father Cinnamon. According to her, the girl simply had no choice, or sooner or later, Linda would have gotten her way by completely kicking Cinnamon out of the house. In August 1985, Cinnamon was brought before the court. She also did not deny her guilt. Her father, David, was supposed to be the prosecution's witness in this case, but he missed the trial, citing illness. The trial lasted 5 days and Cinnamon, then 15 years old, was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years imprisonment. She was then sent to Camarillo Juvenile Penitentiary in California To those who saw her in prison, it seemed inconceivable that this serene child could commit such a crime. One investigator from the DAA's office, Jack Newell, felt the same way. He didn't think this girl could be a cold-blooded killer. The police sensed that something was wrong with the case, and even after the case was closed, he kept digging. Immediately after the Cinnamon trial, her father received an insurance payment of $835,000. Because it turns out, Linda's life was insured by 4 insurance companies. 2 of the 4 insurance policies were issued a week before the girl's death. With this money, David purchased 2 new homes, as well as several cars. In the summer of 1986, David married 7 times. His wife was Patty Belly, the younger sister of his murdered wife. They tried to keep their marriage secret from others. They did manage to do it for a while, but soon Patty got pregnant and the truth about their relationship came out. These facts added even more suspicion to the story, and in 1988, 3 years after the murder, the detective decided to talk to Cinnamon again about what really happened that night. At first, Cinnamon said she no longer knew exactly what had happened, but when the detective told her that her father had been married to Patty for 2 years, the girl finally decided to tell the truth about the night tragedy that happened 3 years ago. Cinnamon revealed that a few weeks before the murder, her father, David, told her and Patty that Linda and one of her brothers were planning to kill him to get his money, and so he will soon have to leave his family and the city because he is worried about his life. Cinnamon told her father that she did not want him to leave. He replied that then they should beat Linda and kill her themselves. The girl was not ready for such a step, but for the next weeks, her father, being alone with her, constantly told her that if she loved him, she had to do it. He managed to convince Cinnamon that since she is a minor, the maximum punishment she will receive is a couple of sessions with a child psychologist. But to make her look repentant in the eyes of justice, David suggested that she fake suicide by writing a suicide note after the crime. He suggested that she shoot herself on the edge of the head, which he said would not hurt the girl. However, she refused. David then suggested to his daughter that he take several dozen pills, which he said were perfectly safe. Cinnamon agreed to take this step because she trusted her father completely, but the only thing she didn't know was that if she hadn't vomited in that booth, she wouldn't have lived to see the cops. Eventually, on the evening of March 19, 1985, David entered his daughter's room and said that this was to happen today, after which David did leave the house, leaving Patty a loaded pistol, which later passed it to Cinnamon. 14-year-old Cinnamon went up to her stepmother's room and shot her in the stomach. She was about to go down, but heard Linda begging for help. As a result, Cinnamon returned to her room and fired another shot into the body of a dying woman. Then she went downstairs and gave the gun to Patty, and then she went to the doghouse, where she heard 3 more shots fired in the house. It was probably the same shots that were later presented to the police as evidence of the Cinnamon attack on Patty. The girl squeezed the suicide note in her hands and took the pills her father gave her. Cinnamon's story seemed very logical, but her words alone were not enough to hold David and Patty accountable. Therefore, the detective suggested that Cinnamon wear a listening device and, during her father's next visit, try to get him to confirm what he said earlier. While visiting his daughter, David did make some self-incriminating remark. He asked his daughter to keep lying, otherwise everyone she knew would end up in jail, and there would be no one else to visit her. He also asked his wife to convince Cinnamon that Patty would switch places with him soon, but naturally, that was also a lie. Because David already knew something was up, and he was just stalling. When he finally stopped discussing the night with his daughter, he was arrested. In October 1988, in addition to David, Patty was also arrested and was quickly brought to light. She fully cooperated with the police and told the Brown family the whole story. Apparently, she moved into David and Linda's house when she was only 11, and almost right under Linda's nose, David cheated on her with her 11-year-old sister. In 1984, by the time Patty was living at David's house for 4 years, David started trying to convince her that they needed to get rid of Linda but every time Patty refused to kill her sister, so David manipulated his daughter into killing Linda. Moreover, on the night of the murder, he drugged his daughter to give her confidence in crime. After his arrest, David realized that his affairs were really bad, and already in prison, a shocking plan was born in his head. While awaiting trial, David became very close to a prisoner named Jones, who was just days away from being released. David offered him $10,000 for Jones to kill a detective on David's case after his release. Another $10,000 for Jones to find a woman who commits a felony to go to the prison where Patty is and kill her there. Jones agreed, and David was confident that he would get away with it. But what he didn't know was that Jones was an undercover cop, and in the end, David, to the charges he already has, was charged with 2 more counts of attempted murder. The trial took place in April 1990. Both girls, Cinnamon and Patty, testified against David. The judge called David a scary man and added that even he was afraid of him. In June 1990, David Brown was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment. David's wife was sentenced to 4 years in prison. As a result of the review of the Cinnamon case, the girl spent only 7 of the 27 years in prison to which she was originally sentenced. She was released in 1992 at the age of 21. After that, she had no problem with the law, but another tragedy occurred in her life, the suicide of her first husband. According to the latest data, she married a local police officer in 2004 and is currently married to him. Patty was released at the age of 25, and after her release, she married a guard who worked at the same prison where she was serving her sentence. David Brown spent 24 years in prison and died in 2014 at the age of 61. Linda and David's daughter, Crystal, was raised by David Brown's mother. Crystal was told that her mother died in a car accident. The truth came out when she was about 13. After she grew up, she tried to find her Aunt Patty and sister Cinnamon by writing on Facebook once, "I need to make peace with them. I don't blame any of them for what happened. I'd like to meet my sisters. Patty and Cinnamon, if you keep your eye on the page, I hope you too see that. Know that no matter what happens, I love you no matter what you did back then. What matters is that you and everyone else know that you are forgiven, and I look forward to meeting you and meeting your families. With love to all of you." Crystal even started her YouTube channel, where she posted videos in memory of her mother. And I also recorded videos of questions about her mother's murder. The girl was probably able to make contact with Patty because another post appeared later on the Crystal page. I think it's time I told you something. Some time ago, I finally met Patty face to face. I'll tell you the truth, I couldn't cry. It wasn't a lack of emotion. It's because I made my peace long ago and forgave her long before I even spoke to her. I've never been an emotional person. Even my husband has seen me cry 1 or 2 times for 15 years together. I'll tell you, she did cry a lot, and I knew she had to let it all out. All I could do was hug her and tell her everything was fine. I completely forgive her, and I don't blame her. I plan to spend more time with her and get to know her better. After all, we have something to catch up on. I have to tell you all that the woman some of you hate doesn't exist. What you've heard, read and seen on TV, it's not about the man I've met. Remember, this tragedy happened more than 30 years ago. I know that it has changed a lot since then, and I can only imagine the pain and heartache and torment she's been through. People change a lot in 30 years, and she's ready for a new beginning.